who died on Thursday morning. I was blessed to be able to be with her on Wednesday. And she, a pediatrician, brought great blessings to this earth during her long life. We also mourn together the death of Lori Quigley's brother-in-law, Dennis Leslie Anderson. I didn't know him, but I have been getting to know him through talking with his siblings and Lori and Phil. And I wish I had known him, for his loss is a genuine loss to this world. He is missed. Lee Cowley's sister, Cheryl Hawley, is feeling very impatient to be all better after her brain surgery. She's doing physical therapy and working hard every day to improve her balance and walking. We also hold Tucker Gurney, who's almost always here and would be if she had not broken a bone above her foot in a skiing accident. And I saved the great news for last. Karen Smith has a new baby grandson. Each time we gather, in each of our hearts, we hold the sadness and we hold the happiness. Let us sit in silence, and as I ring the bell, I invite you to bring any names of people to this meditation. Any names of people to whom you would like particularly to send the love of this community. And I'll tell you a secret. There were many times, about 10 years ago, when I said my own name. It's okay to do that too. Who are experiencing sadness and fright over the coming inauguration. Let us also hold those who are experiencing joy over the coming inauguration. Let us hold this country as there is a transfer of power that is always a time of weakness in a country, that is a time of anxiety for some and happiness for others. We hold all of that in the love and light of this community. Amen, and may it be so.
Today's offering will be shared by Oseti Sakawin Camp, a unified encampment of water protectors dedicated to protecting critical resources from the Dakota Access Pipeline. Will you join with me in saying the words printed in the order of service for our offering? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share Ossetti Socoquin Camp of Water Protectors in the South Valley community, thank you for your gifts.
After Dion gives our reading, you will be hearing the world premiere of a new song that was just born, dedicated to Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman talks to slaves. From Sarah Bradford's Life of Harriet Tubman, published in 1869. Harriet Tubman was about 25 when she made her own escape. From that time till the beginning of the war, her years were spent in these journeyings back and forth. Sometimes members of her party became exhausted, footsore, bleeding, and declared that they could not go on. They must stay where they dropped down and die. Others would think a voluntary return to slavery better than being overtaken and carried back, and would insist upon returning. Then there was no remedy but force. The revolver carried by this bold and daring pioneer would be pointed at their heads. "Dead Negroes tell no tales," said Harriet. "Go on or die." And so she compelled them to drag their weary limbs on their northward journey.
Harriet Tubman here? I think I do. We've been with Tubman in our house as we have prepared this song. And she was quite a woman. Born in 1822 in Dorchester, Maryland, a slave state. Harriet Tubman was often beaten and whipped by her various masters. She tells of having to stay up all night, even though she had to work during the day, so that she could rock the cradle of a sick child. The mistress kept a whip under her pillow, and she would use it if her baby cried, meaning that Harriet had fallen asleep. Harriet suffered a traumatic head wound as a child when a heavy metal weight destined for an escaping slave hit her instead. All her life, she experienced dizziness, pain, and spells of hypersomnia, meaning that she kept falling asleep. She also had visions of freedom. She held the marks of slavery on her body and on her heart. But instead of holding up, as is often our tendency when we've gone through difficult things, and then complaining to everyone about our difficult past, she became impassioned with leading others to freedom. I can't imagine how it was for her to return over and over again to the place where she lived as a slave. And there was a huge $40,000 bounty on her head. That was a lot of money in 1850. Harriet Tubman was called the Moses of her people, for she led them out of slavery into the promised land. And as in the reading, she kept a pistol with her, and if people wanted to return, she gave them a choice, freedom or death. They always chose freedom. There's a wonderful story about Harriet Tubman becoming the first woman to lead an armed assault during the Civil War. When Montgomery and his troops conducted an assault on a collection of plantations along the Combahee River. I may not be pronouncing that right, but it's a river down near Montgomery. And it looks like Combahee. Tubman served as a key advisor, and she accompanied the raid. On the morning of June 2nd, 1863, Tubman guided 3 steamboats along Confederate mines in the waters leading to the shore. And once ashore, the Union troops, you can tell I'm a Yankee, the Union troops set fire to the plantations, destroying infrastructure and seizing thousands of dollars worth of food and supplies. And when those steamboats sounded their whistles, slaves throughout the area understood that that area was being liberated. Tubman watched as slaves stampeded towards the boats. "I never saw such a sight," she said, describing the scene of chaos with women carrying steaming pots of rice on their heads, pigs squealing in bags slung over shoulders, and babies hanging around their parents' necks. Although their owners, armed with whips and handguns, tried to stop the mass escape, their efforts were nearly useless. As Confederate troops raced to the scene, steamboats packed full of slaves took off towards Beaufort. More than 750 slaves were rescued in that raid. more than 750 slaves. And I still think we can't imagine what it was to be a slave, although I think it would be a good thing to sit and think about. Let's just think about that for a moment. Because to understand Harriet Tubman is to touch that world that is so far from the world of privilege in which we live. So just a moment, thinking of what you've heard about being a slave, what it might be to be a slave. One of my favorite things that Harriet Tubman ever said is this: I freed thousands of slaves, and I could have freed thousands more if they had known they were slaves. Some people living with the chains of slavery could not see their chains. They thought that whatever they were experiencing, I'm sure they didn't think that what they were experiencing was good, but they had food to eat, a roof over their heads, that it was better than what they didn't know. Some of them had what they called kind masters, and that is what they hoped for when they were sold. What was this thing called freedom? What was this thing called a free land, of which Harriet Tubman spoke? To them, it was an unimaginable place. At that time, she couldn't show them photographs of a place where they would be free, or send them to the internet for podcasts of nice people on the other side. Those chains, they wondered, might be replaced by something worse, by starvation. Following that Moses through the woods and across the rivers was taking too much of a chance. After all, their master wasn't that bad. In many ways, I imagine a lot of you are thinking of your own lives right now. I know in my own, there have been many ways I have been enslaved, not touching really what those slaves felt. I have had a kind of privileged enslavement and an enslavement that I have fought against. And I encourage each of you, as we think of Harriet Tubman, to recognize within you that deep thirst for freedom, that deep thirst to be free, that we must not quench by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred, or watching too much television news, I would add. And do not believe the people that tell you it is easier not to go to freedom, for I'm sure there were many people on the plantations who said, it's going to be worse if you're free. Hang on to your vision of freedom. Be careful. Protect that thirst you have deep inside you to be free. I believe to become completely free is the journey of a lifetime, and a difficult one, a struggle that often alienates the people closest to us. During his early ministry in Montgomery, Alabama, Martin Luther King showed us that thirst that he had for freedom, that he was able to quench through non-violent action that led to more real and practical freedoms. He was the spiritual leader of the Montgomery bus boycott, which I am proud to say was ongoing when I was born. I love to think of my little self being born into that time when people throughout Montgomery woke up and would not take a bus. Some of them walked 20 miles for that freedom. Throughout that boycott, which lasted many, many months, Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of a different kind of world, his ability to see what was not there yet, inspired people to walk and walk and walk. And as they walked, with that belief in that vision, they were able to make that vision come true. Not easily, not in the first day, but after months of walking, they themselves became free. It is almost excruciating to watch the civil rights movement unfold, as Lou and I have been watching those documentaries each night, because of all the resistance they encountered from people who look just like us. And we see the persistence, resilience, and commitment to nonviolence that did bring about change. Martin Luther King's dream made the protesters sitting in at segregated lunch counters able to withstand the violent words and blows. As Harriet Tubman, his job was that of a prophet, to see what was out of sight, to envision what could be. He had to inspire people, many of whom had given up hope, into believing in the possibility of racial equality. This business of seeing what is beyond our sight is the work of prophets. It is also the fruit of an ascetic Buddhist practice in Japan. This seeing far, there's a word for it in Japanese, mitsu. It means seeing far, seeing beyond. Does not come easily. In fact, in many ways, it's kind of legendary. In the mountains around where we lived, ascetic priests would go on 1,000-day fasts, where they could eat, but all they could eat is what they could forage. And they would be there during the deep snows. And they would also, 1,000 was the word, the number for everything. They would go to those mountain streams and do mizugori, which means to throw water, buckets of water on themselves, 1,000 buckets of freezing water. And in the process, they were blessed with the ability to see, and also the ability, which I ended up investigating in a study when I was in seminary, and I had done during my time in Japan. They were also able to communicate with animals. There was something about their ascetic practice that brought them close to all sentient beings. In this time, I'm not encouraging you to put on a loincloth and head for the mountains. I don't want that on my head. I hear some people are feeling relief out there. But I do encourage you to find a practice that encourages that quiet within. That quiet within from which we can see beyond what is around us. And there's a wonderful meditation group that is a road to that meets on Saturday mornings, and you can, yes, you can talk with Bob Spicer if that is your chosen way of finding that quiet within. I have to admit that sometimes I get my most wonderful ideas of seeing ahead when I'm on transportation. Thank heavens not while I'm driving. But when I'm on trains and buses and airplanes, or when Lou is driving, which is always a better idea anyway. During those times, sometimes the clouds open and I see a little farther than what is in front of my eyes. What can you see? What can you see for this nation beyond what is right here and perhaps scaring your pants off? Let's think about what we might see beyond what is here. One more time. I'm going to invite you to share those visions with each other at the end of this service. Last week in our service, I said that one of the greatest challenges for me about the current political situation is that it's so blasted distracting. It distracts us from what really matters, which is why we threw away our television 20 years ago. And now we have one, but we don't watch the news. Sometimes we can only see that distracting thing, which I'm going to call squirrel. We only see that squirrel and our eyes are racing with it when there is a whole forest, a whole earth to consider. On Friday evening last week, I listened to 6 amazing women tell their life stories. The last one, a physician and a dear friend, said, "We can see the state of our country through how we treat the most vulnerable." I'm going to read that again. We can see the state of our country through how we treat the most vulnerable. She was a woman who helped AIDS patients before they even knew what the illness was. When we don't know where to look, when we're feeling distracted, I invite you to look at the citizens of Salt Lake City who are the most vulnerable, the homeless, the undocumented, the uninsured, a number that is going to grow and grow. In Harriet Tubman's time, the most vulnerable were the enslaved. There are people still enslaved in our country through human trafficking. There is still so much work to do, and that work is going to become more and more important in the coming months. Let us not get distracted. If you have to, practice. Lou and I would practice when we would go, before we would go to a visit at her parents' house. I have to tell this story. Because her mother watched Fox News. In fact, sometimes I even used squirrel. I would look out the window and go, "Oh my goodness, look at what that squirrel is doing." Do what you can, bring laughter, do something. But don't let your energy get sucked in by distraction. All of our energy is needed. I believe that as people of conscience, we will have to act, or we will lose all of our energy through complaining and being angry. So if you're angry, well, sometimes anger can be really good, but if you're wanting to head that to do something. And if you're complaining just so that you can feel better, shut up. Use that energy that's coming out to make a change. Save that energy. If you're complaining, try to get the message. You are falling into their hands. Harriet Tubman would tell us we were wasting our time. I imagine that there were Unitarian abolitionists in Boston who spent a lot of time talking about the horrors of slavery, and some acted. Those are the people we want to be. Let us be the people who act. Don't let your energy be pulled away by complaining. In President Barack Obama's final address to this country, to us, he made it clear what he was seeing, that being a citizen was more important, that it carried more weight than we had imagined. In many ways, we had lost sight of our freedom. And in the coming months, let us learn together to exercise this precious gift of freedom that Harriet Tubman gave to people living in slavery. We in this sanctuary know something about freedom. Many of us found Unitarian Universalism in our search for freedom. Some of us have gone through some pretty deep psychological woods, hearing the dogs baying behind our vision of freedom. We have quenched our thirst. And that personal freedom is still important work. Before winter, in the place where we lived in Western Japan, people bound up bushes and trees to help them survive winter. The snow was so heavy and wet, it hovered right below freezing. But when the heavy snow, sometimes Lou and I experienced 3 feet of snow overnight. And that snow would sit on those bushes, and then it would freeze, and the bushes would break. Whole parts of trees would fall to the ground. But when I was first there, I hated to see those trees all bound up against the wind and the snow, because that reminded me how I wasn't yet free. I invite all of you to continue your searches for personal freedom. And when you react to something you see outside that does not look free, consider that you need to make yourself a little more free. It is a life work, and we will need this quest as we seek to use these gifts of freedom that are ours as a citizen. When I went to Standing Rock, I asked the minister, Reverend Karen von Fossen of Bismarck, the congregation that has facilitated so much that is going on there. I asked her how her community could move into action so quickly. Their small community became the hub of communication and developed strong relationships with the leaders of the movement of Ocheti Shakuin. So they were able to do what was necessary on very short notice, and they kept it up for months and months, and the efforts continue now. She said to me that their congregation was already deeply involved with social action. She said to me, we were already nimble. Isn't that a marvelous word? Let's be nimble. It is my hope when I see how we can survive the next months. It is my hope that we become nimble. We will need to be nimble. When I put a call out for letters that we need to write, I did it on our listserv. I received a wonderful suggestion from Tucker Gurney that we write letters of gratitude to President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. I also think that we need to write letters to Mayor Jackie Biskupski and tell her not to close the road home and to consider turning that Simpson property into affordable housing. I have prepared a box. It is a beautiful little box over there. Can you see it? Right by the altar. And in it are many pens and lots of paper. I invite you after this service, as you nibble on treats from the social action bake sale, I invite you to write a letter. There is a list of possible letters in there. Write one that particularly takes your heart. And you know what? The letters that they most read are those handwritten letters. So all that time I waste, scrolling through and pushing sign my name, they don't really look at those. But they will look at the letters we write by hand. And we're going to start doing that every week after our meetings. If you would like to be coordinator of these events, see me after this meeting. Together, let us learn to practice our freedom until this practice is a part of our lives, like brushing our teeth. The particulars of Harriet Tubman's first journey remain shrouded in secrecy. She crossed into Pennsylvania with a feeling of relief and awe. This is how she recalled her experience years later. When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven. We are living in that heaven. Let us not let anyone take that heaven from us. And let us extend that heaven to those who do not have access to it. Harriet Tubman's feelings about heaven were not limited to whether a president she agreed. Can we feel that heaven together in spite of the news around us? For we are living in that heaven of freedom. Together, let us explore what it means to be free, and then let us be wise stewards of those freedoms. You know who I'm most angry with? And don't raise your hand if you did this. It would be a bad idea. Are the people who did not vote in this election. I'll get over it. So don't worry if you're one out there. But I believe that we did not take our freedom seriously. Our freedom, part of which is to cast our vote. Together we will find that freedom, and we will be poised to create that freedom for those who are most vulnerable of this country. For for the people, for the many people in this city, in this state, and in this country who are experiencing great fear at this time of what will happen. But we need to feel our freedom in order to share it. So as my grandfather always would say, buck up. We have those freedoms, and I invite you to feel them and then share them with those who are most vulnerable. I invite you to hear again the words of this song. Go down, Moses, let my people go. Way down in Egypt land, let my people go. Come with me, my people, come with me to that land. The Lord has sent me to lead you to that land. Don't stop, don't look around. Keep your eyes on the road ahead. We can rest when we reach the other side of this land. Fear not, for all of us are here to walk by each other's sides. We can rest when that freedom is experienced by all. Amen, and may it be so. I invite you to stand and sing out our closing song. Number 1021, Lean on Me. For we are going to need to lean on one another.
Nope, just so you don't get there and go up the next. When you turn the page, there's a little repeat sign. So go down and go back. Go on it.
We are
for ourselves and for the world. May we reach out to others, lean on them, and let them lean on us. May we quench our thirst with kindness and love, not with bitterness and hatred. May we find the freedom that brought Harriet Tubman great joy. And she said this: "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees, over the fields, and I felt I was in heaven." Let us be bold in not letting anyone take that vision of heaven away from us. This is our country. This is Harriet Tubman's heaven. Let us make it our heaven. And Harriet Tubman did a lot of work to make this country heaven for all people. That is our work. May it be so. Amen.